What's up, guys, and welcome to the SCORE eSports podcast. You know me, I am your host, Colin McNeil. In the studio with me, Josh Burry.
Hello.
Daniel Rosen.
Hi.
We're back. We're talking about NA LCS again. And who do we have on, guys, but none other than the man behind C9, Jack Etienne, the co-founder and CEO of Cloud9. Super excited to speak to him.
I'm really excited to get into this conversation. I actually got to meet Jack once at BlizzCon.
Oh, really?
It was really cool. They were one of the early adopters of Heroes of the Storm, which is why I was there.
Close to your heart, yeah.
And I think that's something that we'll probably touch on at some point during the discussion, maybe about the early adoption thing. But I'm getting ahead of myself here, I think.
Yeah, we might. I'm eager to get into it. So let's just bring Jack on.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Jack, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Great, excellent. And look at that tree behind you. That is awesome. What is that in the tree? What are we looking at?
We've got several badges from our players. See if I can get this one down. So I don't know if you can see this okay, but it's one of our players.
Yep. Oh, there
you might recognize him.
Yeah, there's the homie.
So,
Sneaky.
yeah, they kindly donated them to our Christmas tree this year, and we've got a bunch of badges from. And we actually, this is kind of a fun one. We kind of made this one.
That's awesome.
It's your boy Rush.
That's right. So he's still with us for the holidays, even though he's in Korea. But yeah, this is. I'm actually in the LCS house right now. They are all fast asleep, dreaming of the Rift, and hopefully I don't wake them up.
Okay, we'll try not to yell too loud. Everybody whisper down.
Everybody keep it down.
It feels very night before Christmas.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
Even though it's like December
The night
13th.
before eSports Christmas.
Yeah.
First
Santa Claus.
First things first, Jack. I guess congratulations are in order because if I'm not mistaken, your org is one of only two that holds a spot in both the 2018 NA LCS and the OWL as well.
Yeah, that's. I guess it's just us and Optic, so
That's right.
It's a small little club.
Now, speaking of that NA LCS, we'll probably touch on OWL in a little bit. But I wanted to start off just asking you actually about the application process. We've heard so much about it. I know some of it is under NDA still. We talked to Steve about it. We talked to the guys from Clutch Gaming, and we've got some varying answers. And I just wanted to get from you a sense of, where exactly did you start? How did you put it together? What your confidence levels were like?
It was like the project of the year when I was putting together like the goals of Cloud9 and actually what my personal goals are. Top of the list was making sure that Cloud9 made it into the permanent partnership with the LCS. And so, it took priority for me over pretty much everything. And I put together a team within my company of folks that'd be really competent at putting together a good application, as well as hiring some outside help to make sure that we weren't missing anything. So it was something that took weeks for us to put together, and there was really this permanent partnership. There was nothing that was more important for us to be a part of than this, because it is, for us, is the biggest evolution of esports that's been around in years, and we had to be a part of it.
Oh, perfectly. Makes total sense. Now, when we were talking to Steve Aronsit, he actually said that they had a 15-page part in their booklet devoted just to him. Did we have a page in C9's booklet devoted just to you, and was it more than 15 pages?
I'm not sure if we had 15 pages on me, we definitely needed to cover the history of Cloud9 and how I fit into it. It was important for Riot to really understand who they were going to be partnering with, and even though they've worked with me for years, I had to be really careful to make sure I put together something that, if someone was reading it that didn't know anything about Cloud9, could get a real sense of what it is that we've built here, and why we would be a good partner for them in this league.
So that's interesting that you mentioned that you wanted to have something that somebody who didn't know what Cloud9 were, so that Riot really understood who they were partnering with. You guys have been in the NA LCS for a very long time, ever since making it through that crazy Challenger run. why was that such a big deal, given that you guys are such a mainstay? Like, I guess where was that level of sort of humility of like, we need to make sure that they really know who we are? Where is that coming from?
This wasn't something I could leave up for chance, where that, I couldn't assume who was going to be involved in reading this. Riot's a really large company, and maybe esports aren't their entire focus, and maybe they don't know the history of Cloud9. Maybe they were a recent hire in the last 2 years and weren't really a part of it. Also, Cloud9 is, it's bigger than League of Legends, and so they needed to understand how we fit into the esports space, how we were involved in other games, how we are early adopters to new games, and how we've really flourished in this esports ecosystem. And so I didn't know who was going to be reading this report, and I had to make sure that the full depth of Cloud9 was shown in this application.
Jack, that's actually really interesting when you said, Cloud9 is bigger than League of Legends. And we did touch on the fact that you are in both the newly franchised NA LCS and the Overwatch League. I guess I want to ask, was there ever a time where you felt like maybe being in one was a risk to your success in the other? Like, was that ever a consideration?
I didn't really think it was ever a risk, but I felt that they needed to know that because Cloud9 is a multi-game esport company, that there would be no lack of focus on League of Legends. They need to know that I was 100% focused on making sure that I would be a good partner for this league. And so I didn't feel like there was a risk on it, but I really wanted to make sure that they understood that it was going to be a huge focus for Cloud9.
So it sounds like you're identifying some of the advantages that Cloud9 had going into this application process. Obviously, nothing is guaranteed, but when you talk about this kind of stuff, what comes to mind for me is certain other teams who applied, who may have had those same advantages or other advantages, say Immortals or Dignitas, who didn't make it in. Now, I know you're not privy to this information. You don't work at Riot, but I'm wondering if you can speak to a little bit about why you think Cloud9 got in and say one of the aforementioned organizations who have that sort of bigger than League of Legends identity did not make it.
I have no idea why some teams got in and why some teams didn't. But I can say that Cloud9's unique in that we were profitable from day one. The philosophy, I bootstrapped this company when I started it with my wife. We didn't take any external investing, and that we were really good about not only building really strong teams that interacted well with with our community and were successful on stage, but we built really strong partnerships with companies that wanted to invest in esports. And so when you're looking for partners in a league, you want to make sure you have people that not only are making great teams, but are really contributing to the success of the league, which means having good partners to make your team economically feasible. And that means sometimes not spending at outrageous rates that are larger than that you can actually bring in from your sponsors. And so I think Cloud9, we hit probably a lot of the things that we're looking for, not only in, hey, we build content, we have successful teams, we have happy players for years. We're really progressive on making sure that our players were full-time employees with benefits for years now. And we were doing all of that while being profitable. And I don't think there are very many teams that could actually say that we're applying.
It's interesting to hear you say the thing about being profitable since day one, because that's something that I specifically asked Dan Fiden about a month and a half ago, I think. And it was interesting hearing that, given that I think we hear a lot of stuff about esports teams running in the red for a long time. I'm wondering how important was, just from a business perspective, was it to maintain that while also being the team that kind of takes risks on newer games and smaller games? You guys have a PUBG team. You guys were, of the major esports orgs, relatively early to stuff like Melee and Smash 4. Your experiments have kind of been into other games as well. You have a Vainglory team. How important is it to balance we are profitable since day one and remain that, but also taking risks on these smaller, less established scenes?
I mean, I don't think that, I don't think I'm in a situation where I'm not able to take risks and try out new games, and give up being profitable. I think if you run efficiently and smartly, that you can do these things. So it's just been ingrained in the way I do business from day one, and I've figured out a way to make it happen. So as these new games come up, often it's with players that want to get involved, and they're not looking for massive salaries. They're looking for support. I need to get to these events. I want to have good gear. I want to have good management to make sure that I'm properly prepared. And so they're not looking for massive salaries. So when you get into these games really early, you can really provide a meaningful a boost of support to these players, and they're not looking for a massive salary. So it allows me to actually get into these early games, these new games really early, and establish a foothold for Cloud9. And when the game becomes large, then I can seek sponsors to help financially support it. And I'm already early in the game, so we often have an advantage over the other teams by having some of the best talent already signed with us.
Now, speaking about getting into games early, I did actually want to ask you about PUBG, but right before I do that, I want to wrap up our sort of franchising application subject here by just asking, okay, so at present time, you're in, crunch time is over, thank God, we made it. What is your goal now going into a league where relegation is functionally eliminated? Of course, I know Cloud9 wants to top the standings. Of course, I know they want to make it to Worlds, probably want to win Worlds too. But beyond getting a lot of W's and not a lot of L's, what are the goals for Cloud9 in the new NA LCS?
With that increased stability, it allows me to invest more in developing new talent, really digging into local here at talent and NA. I can really invest in that, try to find those future stars, and get them an academy house, get them really good coaching and management, make sure that we're paying these guys a good salary for the amount of work that they're putting into it, which allows them to give up on other opportunities and focus purely on League of Legends. So with that stability, I'm able to invest further into and building a more stable team for Cloud9 for our future. And so a lot of my focus has been now that, hey, we're in the league. Let's ramp up our content teams, and let's ramp up our investment in developing our players.
It's interesting to hear you say that, because I think historically Cloud9 and you as well have been known for kind of having this eye for developing League of Legends talent. And I'm wondering, you guys, let's talk about scouting grounds for a minute then. Cloud9, you guys went out of your way, you grabbed 2 extra draft picks, 3 total, the most of anybody. You bought the first draft pick. What was that about for you? Obviously you that's about getting this talent, but why go so hard in the scouting grounds process?
I mean, that was the idea. Cloud9 gets into this franchise, then that we're going to invest heavily into building talent for the future. And part of that was through the scouting grounds process. There were some great NA talents that were showing up there, and I wanted to be first in line to scoop up the best talent. Our original draw was 9th, which is kind of funny because we're Cloud9, but it's not funny when you see some really top talent like League that as an NA top laner who looks like he's got fantastic potential. I knew that player was going to be picked up first, whoever had that spot. So I knew it had to be me. So I went and contacted those teams that had better draws than me, and some of these teams were so focused on building their LCS roster, they weren't really focusing yet on scouting grounds. And I saw this is important to me, and what's it going to take for me to take that spot from you?
Okay, so Jack, as we've discussed, you've been in esports for quite a long time, and you've been at the helm of Cloud9, but we've got 4 orgs coming into the NA LCS who have never done League of Legends before. I wonder if you had them all around a table, what advice you would give them coming into 2018?
Yeah, those guys got they've done great stuff in the games that they've been involved in, and I think they're gonna bring a lot to the table to help the league and help all of us with, especially around their sponsors that they can bring to us and the sponsor relationships. But the job of running an esports team is unique. It's not the lessons that they learned running their various sports teams that will give them some insight on how to run an esports team, but it is different. And so, yeah, it's hard to like succinctly say like, hey, this is a word of information, a word of advice that's actually really help you. I think the most important thing I would say is you need to build really good staff for your team first, get a really top end coach, get great management, and listen to your players and I think it's really important to focus on good teamwork. It doesn't matter how good a player is individually. This is a team game at the end of the day. And if communication is subpar, if there's toxicity amongst the players, it's just not going to work. So focus on that teamwork. And I think that the biggest way to make that happen is get a really good coaching staff in place.
Okay, that sounds like pretty good advice to me. It's not just about the roster, it's about the infrastructure as well. Now, we don't know, actually. It's rumored that there were over 200 applications to the NA LCS. Clearly, there were some big players involved, not all of which made it. Do you feel like the 10, did you feel like the 10 that did make it were the objectively correct, the appropriate choice by Riot?
I think that the partners that we have in the league are fantastic. I'm really excited to work with these guys. So I've been really impressed with what some of these guys are already putting together, and I think that they're going to definitely help make the league a more entertaining, bring better partners to bear than that we've had before. And I think that they did select really good partners for this league.
Okay. Absolutely, and I think I think it definitely shows in sort of some of the reaction we've had. But I think we want to take, for just a second, a step away from League. And as you keep mentioning, Cloud9's a multi-game organization. And I wanted to ask you about CSGO for a second.
Yes,
sure.
And something that's always been interesting to me is sort of the divide. People kind of make jokes a lot about NACS. And I'm curious, right? You guys are, at the moment, and for some time now, have sort of been considered the best, if occasionally top two, but the best upper echelons of North American CSGO. But I'm wondering, sort of, is that enough for you guys? Because we've seen other North American organizations make roster moves with these are attempts to be real serious international competitors with non-NA rosters and stuff like that. I'm wondering, is that something that you guys are interested in, or is it more about sticking to your guns with NA players in NA and sticking to being the best in NA?
I mean, depending on the time, we have won international events, like within the last year. And at this point right now, the talent for Counter-Strike is better than it's ever been. And any team can take games off any other team in the top 10. In the past, there were times where there was one team that was so far superior that was really, that team would be the only team that would be winning events. And you could make an argument that SK and FaZe are just way better than everybody else, but I actually really feel that the top 10 right now could take games off each other. We started as an NA only org. We definitely do have some pride in that. We're consistently the best team out of North America. That definitely feels good, and we have a lot of confidence that with the players that we have, that we can win international tournaments and have won international tournaments. So I don't see us really making a change and trying to make some sort of super team by grabbing all stars all around the world. I think we're going to stay the course on what we're doing, and I think we're getting better and better. With the changes that we've made recently, the roster feels really solid, and I'm really excited to see what we can do with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you mentioned, obviously you guys are still working through North American events, or through international events rather, and I definitely think that the gap a little bit is closing. But
Sick roster.
That's a super loaded thing to say. Gap is close.
Yeah, I'm talking about CS:GO. I'm talking about CS:GO.
Okay.
But there are other gaps, Daniel.
There are several gaps
other
in the world. But I again, it's interesting, and again, it does sort of. I like that sort of element of pride. It does sort of touch on you guys taking those kinds of risks. And speaking of which, I think Josh has something that he wants to ask about with regards to that.
So I'm really interested to get your opinion on this, Jack, because like we've mentioned, you guys will go into these newer games and really get a feel for what it is. And then oftentimes, I don't, this is just my personal perception, but oftentimes it feels like you kind of come to a realization about what the game is about. And at that point, you decide like how you're going to continue with the game. It kind of feels that, like, at least from what I saw with like Heroes of the Storm and some other things. So PUBG, what are you seeing from this game? Because I feel like it's this weird situation where the game, as a game, is incredibly popular. Like nobody can contest that. The numbers are there, right? And we always talk about that organic growth in esports, about how you got to have the numbers. And then maybe the esports scene can like develop in a more organic way. Whether or not that's now how esports will develop in our world is, another question entirely. But what are you seeing from this game now as an esport? And like, what are your early feelings on it? Because for me, I love the idea, but it feels like there might be some barriers to get to the point where we really would want it to be as an esport.
Yeah, I'd say that's really right on. It's as far as a game, obviously, to watch on Twitch from a single player perspective and their journey through that game, it's epic. It's amazing. It's one of the most viewed games on Twitch, and people love it. The problem is transitioning that like single person adventure through the game to an esport is really difficult, because how do you cover that many people and what they're doing, and how do you transition that to a spectator sport? It's really difficult, and there's issues with just the spectatability of the game when you're dropping that many people on a map, trying to realize who's who and where they're going, and trying to capture the action as it happens. I don't think it's impossible. I mean, if you look at, I feel like the strides that Blizzard has done with Overwatch, if you watch VODs of World Cup last year versus this year, the game is much easier to watch, and they've made huge strides on making it a spectator sport. And if they were to do that, then maybe PUBG can do similar strides to make the game easier to follow. I've been wondering that if they need to have multiple streams, maybe one stream per team, and maybe they reveal the in-game comms, so to make the spectator experience more exciting, so that if I am a Cloud9 fan, I would like to watch my team and listen to their comms as they go through their experience, then that would capture my attention, and then maybe people could just go to the stream of their team of choice. Maybe that's a good way to deal with it. I'm not sure, but there's some really unique challenges to converting this game to a strong esport that they need to figure out.
That's really interesting, and I like the idea of a team stream potentially. I know the game is a long time from this, but I've always wondered if maybe like an in-client spectating thing where you could choose who you wanted to spectate, and maybe like the way that CS:GO, where you can get the caster audio over the actual, like, while spectating. I always wonder if that might not be an interesting opportunity, because that way you can really follow who you want to follow. But I guess we'll see. Spectating is obviously contentious.
I think it puts up a lot of other issues, because like when you're at an event, that's just not really possible to do that, because it's what makes esports really special. When you go to an event, you share like this excitement of what's going on the screen with your friends, and in a multi-streaming environment, that's not possible. So like, there's a lot of challenges to figure out there.
Absolutely, and I think actually it's funny that viewership and spectating is such a common issue with the way esports are growing, right? We have this in PUBG, we talk about it in Overwatch, and that's been, and you mentioned, obviously, I think I agree with you, it's gotten significantly better watching the preseason stuff and the World Cup stuff, but I'm wondering, is this just a problem of, I guess I'm wondering, do you think that the difficulty of, say, spectating Overwatch has sort of led to some of the complications, I think, in early viewership of stuff being a little bit low right now? We haven't seen a lot of tournaments lately, but is it perhaps more led to Overwatch the difficult game to watch, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to overcome that now that more and more people think it?
I think that with the preseason stuff that we saw and the most recent World Cup, I think a lot of that spectate questions are getting answered. And the viewership of the World Cup was phenomenal, and people loved it. The preseason viewership was very strong as well, and I think people really enjoyed the experience. So I think those questions are going to be less. They'll be asked a lot less as the first season of Overwatch rolls out. And I expect that I think it's going to take off next year. Obviously, I'm pretty biased, but I think it's going to be fantastic.
Now, Dan tantalized me a few minutes ago there when he used the phrase "close the gap." He was talking about CS, but I want to move right back to League of Legends and ask, with all of the outside investment, the massive upgrade in infrastructure, and the no relegation that will, as you alluded to, will help stabilize rosters and hopefully therefore help improve them. Are we going to see a gap closing between NA and Korea it's not going to happen next year, but in the coming years?
That's a really tough question to answer. It's I can tell you that every year that the scrims become much more competitive than they were the prior year. This year's scrims, we were having really solid scrim records against the top teams in the world, and it definitely made me feel like, hey, we're making progress here, and that our communication is getting better and it's being competitive. And I think that given that trajectory, that yes, we're going to become more competitive as time goes by.
Okay, this is just evidence, guys, that I haven't had my second coffee yet. It's not as early as it is where Jack is, but it's still kind of early for me because now I want to actually jump back to see
We're going everywhere.
We're going everywhere. Jack, I apologize for your brain.
Jack is ready.
Guys, I wanted to jump back to CS for a little bit because I am, look, I'm an objective journalist, okay, guys, but I do really enjoy watching Cloud9 CS. It's they're definitely one of my favorite rosters.
He's not just saying that for the cameras, by the way.
That is actually real.
That is
real talk.
And I want to know. Are we gonna let Swag out the gate for some more qualifiers, a DreamHack event here or there, ESL game, maybe Tarek's feeling sick or something?
With the given rules, it makes it real difficult to put a lot of time into developing him. If things changed, it's possible. He's a fantastic player, and I love the guy. He's obviously been connected with Cloud9 for a long time, and I'd really consider it. But until his chains are broken and he is free, it makes it really difficult to do that.
Oh my God, I love that quote. I want that on my wall until his chains are broken and he is free. And then it's just a picture of Swag.
No. Now, if it ever happens, if we ever get the full unban, headline: his chains are broken.
Chains broken.
Swag returns.
I am actually curious though. What is it? I guess for you, from your perspective, obviously he's still streaming and he's doing great there, and people love him. But what is it like for you having a guy like Swag on, essentially having him permanently on the bench? How does that feel personally, given that he has been connected with you guys for so long?
Right now, technically, he's not under contract with Cloud9 anymore. But it's been, for years he has been, and it was his choice to not continue to sign on with Cloud9. I think he was hoping that maybe someone would invest in teams that couldn't go into the major process. It's frustrating that you have a talent that is as amazing as he is, that we're not able to use him. Also, the guy is just has a tremendous personality. He's such a good person that it's really hard to see him in that situation when you see this amazing potential for someone to be one of the best players in the world, but he's not able to really follow his the path he should be following. And so it's been great working with him, but it's also been really frustrating to see this amazing talent not being utilized.
I think it definitely kind of sucks from his perspective. We recently put out a big thing with Swag that Josh wrote that was, it kind of touched on all of that. And I was just curious about your perspective there. I do want to take that and jump a little bit. We're also jumping back to League of Legends again. Apologies for the messing, but I also want to jump back to the past a little bit, because I'm curious about, as you mentioned in your application, talking about the history of Cloud9 League of Legends. We wanted to ask about some of the historical stuff for some future projects we're working on, and I wanted to ask you about your guys' big gauntlet run from a few years back, and I was wondering kind of where you owe, like, do you owe anything specifically for that success? Like, what do you kind of account for why that happened?
The first gauntlet run, I mean, we've done 3 of them.
Yeah, I know, right? The first one, yeah.
Humble brag.
The first one, man, was a hell of a ride, and like. That will definitely be probably one of like it was probably one of the most exciting experiences like in my entire life, like being a part of that, going from a team that we were headed straight for relegation, bringing back, High to shore up all the issues that we had, him doing a role change and in a role that he wasn't super comfortable with, but his personality and his ability to communicate, basically it didn't matter that he wasn't good at jungle. He made it work anyways. The rest of the team worked so much better. It wasn't an issue. Now it took us several weeks. It wasn't like he just showed up and we just suddenly we're this great team that was going to perform pretty well at Worlds. It was a process of to get things up and running, and the gauntlet process, I felt like, was just enough experience at pushing this team to work together for us to click right at the last moment. I mean, at each gauntlet game, we were down like 0-2, I think, for the first 2. I was preparing in my head a speech of like, hey, it was a tough season, but look how far we've come. And then suddenly we start getting wins, and we reverse sweep 2 games in a row. And I was like, wow, how's this happening? I need to go buy tickets for Korea now. But that gauntlet process, I think we spent more games in the gauntlet than in the actual season. I think it was something like 15, 16 games, and it really forged the team to be ready to move on to Worlds. And it was just enough games for us to actually figure out how to work together as a unit. That was a hell of a ride. I really loved it.
That was sort of my first year covering League of Legends. I think it was maybe my 4th month covering League of Legends, and there was some unironic Cloud9 is the best team in the world talk going around after that incredible one, and the first week of Worlds. But I'm curious. You mentioned High there. Were you personally nervous about the role swap there? Like, I know that were there any conversation going? I know that he's sort of always been looked to as a figure of leadership within the team, and I heard from some of our guys who were kind of there around with you guys that there was, there were a lot of conversations with him. What was kind of the talk with him like, and were you nervous about it at all?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was so nervous. We didn't know. That was not the plan. This wasn't like a plan. Hey, this is bring in High and role swap, and we'll go from there. Like, we brought in High to do a couple of scrims to teach the team how to communicate effectively, because, and I'm trying to remember. I think Meteos asked to bring him in to try to understand how he communicates better, or we just said, hey, we need to get better communication, let's bring him in and watch and see what happens. But when that first scrim with High back in, and we were all watching the scrim, like me and Meteos are watching the scrim and listening to it, it was really clear that like the dysfunctional communication that we had before High came back and then he came on, it was vastly better. And even though he wasn't as skilled as Meteos in the jungle role, the communication was so important and so valuable that it overcame. It was still a better team than with Meteos on it. And at that point in time, what I wanted to do was like, okay, Meteos, you heard what happened, and all the rest of the players, you saw what happened. Let's recreate that. Let's put Meteos back in there. And Meteos was like, no, like, you need High now. And I need to step back and let this team go with high on it. And that was really tough. And it wouldn't have happened unless Medios had like insisted that we do it that way. And I have a lot of trust in Medios, and I'm like, okay, all right, let's try this. But this is crazy, but let's try this.
I want to go back to the even further back in the past now, Jack. We're
of time.
We're going into the mist-shrouded past of Cloud9.
Yeah.
That was unintentional, but mist-shrouded. But anyways,
Oh,
it was completely unintentional. I
like it.
I like the term mist-shrouded. It's great. I wanted to talk a little bit about the origins of Cloud9. Just 2 brief points here. The first, you talked about starting this company with your wife and wanting to be profitable from day one. But I have to ask you, that moment when you decided this was happening, you decided with your wife, evidently, that this is going to happen. Yeah. Can you bring us back to that moment and talk about your confidence level, like what you were feeling and what you were expecting for the future? Because Cloud9 is now a major partner in 2 incredibly big the 2 biggest franchise leagues, at least. You can't really argue that at all. So what were you thinking, and what were you expecting?
If you look back in time, I had been with TSM for a while. I was brought, TSM worked with me to help them be profitable. I've got this great following. What could we do with it? So I had been getting sponsors, and I had been really pushing increasing revenue already for TSM. So I had a really good feeling that, hey, I could do this. I've already got the relationships with the partners that I need. The biggest fear for me really was that I was very invested in Crunchyroll and what I was doing there, and it wasn't like I suddenly just dropped Crunchyroll and dropped TSM and focused on Cloud9. There was a bit of time where I was kind of working on all of them at the same time. But at some point in time, I had to make the decision. I can't focus on Crunchyroll anymore and do right by Cloud9. If Cloud9 is going to make it to this, it's going to continue to grow. It needs my attention fully. So I had to step away from Crunchyroll. And Crunchyroll was, it was an amazing place for me to be at. I was running their ad sales team. It was on a fantastic trajectory, just growing like crazy. And I had to step away from a company that was doing really well. It was very stable, and was looking to grow and go amazing places. I had to step away from that to focus purely on Cloud9. And at that time, we didn't know where esports was heading, but I loved it, and it was all I thought about. And I remember asking my wife, like, hey, should I just focus on this full time? Like, this is something we should just make our thing. And she's like, absolutely. Because I don't want to hear you have regrets for the rest of our lives if we don't do it. So let's do it. With her backing, I'm like, all right, let's do this. Just go all in. And I left Crunchyroll and focused on Cloud9.
What was the scariest moment for you during this entire process?
Man, that's easy to answer, man. This killed me. So I left Crunchyroll, said goodbye to that. I wasn't working really. I wasn't working on TSM anymore. I was fully into Cloud9, and it was maybe a month later that Hai had his lung collapse, it definitely realized hey, this is really fragile. I'm losing my team captain of my most important team, and all of this could quickly fall apart because we're really at that time. I don't think we were in Counter-Strike at that time. I can't quite remember, but it definitely was hey, Cloud9 is one pillar I felt at that time. And it was defining for me where I need to be involved in a lot of different esports to build something that's really stable. And that one team going down isn't going to take down Cloud9. And that was, not only was it terrifying for, a good friend of mine to suddenly get sick. That was awful. And realizing hey, I need to make sure that I have the best healthcare for my players. And these guys are all depending on me. With Hai going down, I got 4 other dudes that are depending on me to make this work. So that experience of the lung collapse with High was very defining for me, where I need to make Cloud9 stronger by being involved in multiple games, and I need to make sure that the players that depend on me have the best healthcare to make sure that when things like that happen, I can take care of them.
Wow, that is fascinating. That's like a Cloud9 flashpoint, you know, like a watershed
It's
moment.
huge.
It sounds like very harrowing story as well. Talking a lot about this business stuff, actually, it occurred to me that you keep bringing home the topic of being profitable, of succeeding economically. And I feel like that's something that still, in the end of 2017, many esports organizations struggle with. And I wonder, I keep asking these advice questions. I feel like I've become that guy, but I wonder if, you know, you could speak to a little bit how you make money with an esports team.
I think, you know, the day one thing was really because I was able to be profitable day one because of all of my experience at TSM. I knew how to package the reach that we had and the engagements that we had in a way that was attractive to sponsors. So I was able to sell sponsors on the idea of Cloud9 before I actually really was signing anything. They said, make this team happen, and we're behind it. But you know, the thing is there's a reason why a lot of people are willing to lose money on esports now. And what's going on is that esports has an incredible following. The reach is super deep on a really specific demographic. That's highly valuable. The thing is even though we have this massive reach the folks the people who buy media, they need to be educated on the actual value of what we have. And it's not an if situation when they recognize the value of what esports is. It's when, and we need to make that when as fast as possible. So for me, a huge part of why the LCS franchise is so valuable to me is that they brought in these fantastic partners who have a lot of the sponsor relationships that I'm looking for, and they can leverage that relationship to help us educate them on how valuable esports is, so they feel more comfortable spending marketing dollars on reaching our audience. So the things that Riot is doing is they've always pushed us forward to make esports like evolve faster. That's like been like their primary thing of that contribution to esports, and they're doing it again by doing this permanent partnership. They're gonna push the education process for the folks who are buying media, for the guys who are buying advertising and doing sponsorships, to realize the huge value that our audience brings to them.
And surely that's going to benefit esports as a whole, not obviously simply League of Legends as well.
Yeah. So, if one of these guys leverages one of their sponsorships, just say you're a massive football team with a huge partnership with Gillette, they're going to sell their team, that sponsor on esports, and then like the competitors of Gillette are going to go, hey, like I want my esports team too. Hey, Cloud9's here ready. We got beards to shave.
Now, Jack, as we sort of start to wind down and as your players start to wake up, I guess, you guys, by which I mean Cloud9, seem to have done it all. You're in all the major esports. You got into the NA LCS. You got into the OWL. What is next? What does the future hold for C9?
I've talked about this a few times with folks. I really want to build, I am going to build a Cloud9 facility where all of our teams live, where we have video production facilities, we have cafeterias, gyms, all of the central services that Cloud9 provides right now to teams that are all over North America. I want to have it all located in one area, so that we could have a video production area where instead of my teams like flying all over the world, the Counter-Strike team can come in at 10, the LCS players can come in, an hour later, and then, Rocket League guys can come in the afternoon. I want to build a really strong camaraderie between our teams and have one central location where I can build a deeper relationship with these players and Cloud9.
Hey, you know what, Jack? You know what else is good about a facility like that? a young journalist can come by and interview all your teams in one convenient space instead of flying over to Copenhagen or wherever it might be.
Yeah, and you guys would be welcome to come over and hang out with us.
Awesome.
Oh man, don't say that. I'm going to be knocking on your door next week.
I love it.
As we wrap up here, Jack, just wanted to give you an opportunity to bring up any topics or touch on any subjects that we didn't already get to, or even just final thoughts and shout outs.
2017 has been the most exciting year in esports that I've had. Like these two major franchises coming to bear and being part of both of them, I'm so thankful and excited. 2018 is going to be huge because now that we have that, I'm going to be investing even more time and into developing our League of Legends team and into our Overwatch team, and it's game changing for us what's happened this year, and I'm so thankful that the publishers actually made these leagues to take this next big step for esports. So 2018 is going to be something special. I think it's going to be one of those years that we remember where, hey, this is the year where esports actually is considered on the same par as a lot of the traditional sports.
Ooh, I like that. I like that sentiment a lot, and I hope that at the end of 2018, maybe we can have you back. Hopefully before that, but also at the end of 2018, and we can discuss if that actually ended up coming to pass.
Yeah.
Now, Jack, I just want to say thank you so much for making the time for the Score Esports podcast. It's been a real pleasure to speak to you.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's really fun.
Thank you very much.
Take care and
go
holidays. C9 CS:GO.
I was going to say happy holidays,
guys.
but
I will. All right, see you guys.
All right, see ya.
Josh, I want an esports Christmas tree.
Why are you asking Josh?
I don't know.
You are in the hierarchy above both of us. You are the one you should be asking.
I am technically your boss.
You should be asking Kyle or something for an esports Christmas.
I should be asking my boss. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Josh is the man behind the boards.
Josh
and
can't really provide a Christmas tree, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't know. Is there a button on your switcher?
There are a lot of things. There are a lot of things I can do.
Yeah.
But providing you instantly with an esports Christmas tree is not one of those things. Unfortunately.
I also don't think I've never really had a Christmas tree, so I can't really help you there either.
Oh, that's awkward.
It's not really awkward. I've never had it. I'm not. My family doesn't do Christmas.
Yeah.
Given my last name.
I mean, I functionally haven't had a Christmas tree for a while because my family switched to a plastic one because they suck.
I mean.
Not that I live with my family anymore either, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, really, you are the master of your own destiny. Or I suppose your girlfriend is the master of your destiny.
That's more accurate. Yeah. It's more accurate. To the subject at hand, guys, I don't know if I'm sure you feel the same. I really enjoyed our chat with Jack. We friggin' splattered his brain with a lot of different shit. We went back in time, forward in time, this esport, that esport, and he was on point.
Yeah, he went the whole way through, and so hopefully it's as fun to listen to as it was to talk, to actually get to speak to him.
It was early over at Jack's place on the West Coast. We're all over the place, and it's it's 11 or whatever, but over there it's pretty early. And he looked like he was on point.
Sneaky was still dreaming at that point.
Sneaky was dreaming of the hyper carry ADC meta. He was hoping that would be his Christmas present. Who knows?
All right, guys. Well, that's another one off our lists. Fantastic to speak to Jack, but we got more coming up. We got more NA LCS.
That's what does that make? 5 NA LCS team owners? 4?
I think it's 4 at this point.
I don't know. I can't. I wasn't hired because I can do math.
I believe it's 4, and I would like it to get to 10. So let's try and do that. I want all 10 teams on this podcast. So keep it locked.
We got a couple in the pipeline. So
yeah. Spoiler alert. We got a couple. We got a couple coming in.
There's some talk.
There's some good shit. With that said, guys, that is all the time we have for this particular episode. So please tune in next time. Don't forget, we are all over the social media. You can holla at us if you want a specific guest on the show, if you want us to ask a specific question, if you want to flame us. I guess you could do that too. I'm not saying do it, but
I see you in those YouTube comments.
Hey, I see you.
I see you.
I see you.
Yeah, well, until the next YouTube comments, for Josh Burry, for Daniel Rosen, I am Colin McNeil saying GG.
Easy.
Wow. BM.
That's confidence.
That's BM.
It's time to make building your champions easier. Introducing theScore eSports' new Builds Calculator, which allows you to plug in items and runes to figure out which build gives you the best stats. The new Builds page also gathers information on what the top players and your favorite pros are building, so you'll be able to try them out yourself. Take control of your champion and try out the new feature on theScore eSports' Builds website by clicking on the link in the description below.